Hey everybody, it's Luke Bensi with SMI and welcome to another episode of The Playbook, Daily Operations for Managing a Security Firm. In this episode, you can see I'm dressed up because today we're talking about money. More specifically, we're talking about profits. And I'm going to be talking to you about profit buckets. Now, as all of you out there probably know, there is a big difference between gross profits and net profits, especially if you're a small business owner. I tell people out there that I may get a contract for $1 million and they're under the impression that I'm putting $1 million in my pocket, and nothing could be further from the truth. So what I thought I'd do today is just show you a little example of a trick that I've used over the last 10, 20 years to kind of break out how I spend the money that comes through the door. So to give you an example, let's say I get a consulting contract for $100,000 here. Now, $100,000, let's say this is for a training contract. I'm going to train some people for a few days in Canada or in Mexico. So it's an international job, and I'm not traveling that far outside of the United States for. So it's $100,000, and I'm going to need some support on this. I'm going to maybe need a couple other instructors. And I may have to develop some training materials, some PowerPoints, some manuals, things like that. And then I'll have the training expenses, the travel expenses that go with it. So of that $100,000, let's say that my direct expenses equal $60,000. That's how much I have to pay other people or to spend money to develop costs. Now, a lot of people out there will say, well, you're in the service industry. So service industry, you can have really high profit margins. Training, you can have very high profit margins. Now, there is no hard and fast rule of thumb. Some people, if they're a product driven, they say, oh, we like to make 20%. In the service industry, people say, oh, I like to make 40% or 50% or 60%. Or I've heard people say 75% profit margin, which I think that's a little bit much. You won't be doing it for a long term if that's kind of your mindset. But I've always tried to operate on the principle of if you can make 33% as your net profit, you're doing pretty good. About 1/3 should go back to you after it's all said and done. So let's say of this 100K, you've got $60,000 in expenses, in direct expenses. Now, that leaves you $40,000 left over. Before I start touching that money, I have to look at, well, what are my indirect expenses as part of this project? So indirect expenses are things such as your administrative support, whether or not you have a receptionist or a bookkeeper, people like that, whether or not you have an office space, you have overhead rent, your phone lines, all these other things that go into running a business. Now, I think it's very greedy or selfish to try to roll in all of your annual, rent or expenses or administrative staff into one contract. I would never do that. I try to operate at a rule of about 5% is kind of what I've operated. Now, I've worked at other places where they've gone up to 9% for their overhead expenses. But let's say working on this model 5%, so that's another $5,000 that I would take out of this 100K to put towards admin. That leaves me over here, $35,000 in net profits. Now, but it doesn't stop there, because as we know, who needs to get his money next? Uncle Sam or the tax man, depending on where you live. So what I've always kind of budgeted out of any net profits that come in is, what am I going to do for taxes? I try to shoot at a target number of about 20%. So if $35,000 comes in net profits, I will immediately go to this bucket down here, and these 4 buckets I call TIPS is the acronym across the bottom, and the T stands for taxes. So I will immediately chop out $7,000 here and get it off into a side account, which we will pay quarterly on our taxes. I'll give it, tell the bookkeeper, hey, carve this out and just pay it quarterly. Now, I know I've worked with some people. They get their money, they get that check, and they immediately open up their checkbook and they write a check for 20% of this and send it right off to Uncle Sam, because they don't want the temptation of spending that other money. They just want to get rid of it as fast as possible so they don't spend it, and then when it does come tax time, they don't have the money to pay it. So immediately 20% or $7,000 of this 35 goes to taxes. The next bucket, the I in tips, stands for investment. So I will take 20% and I will invest that profit back into my company. Now, investing back into my company could mean several things. It could be a new product or innovation that we're trying to develop. It could go towards that. It could go towards an employee, maybe giving them a raise, a bonus, whatever. It could be remodeling the office. I don't know. Whatever it is, but that is money that goes back into the company. Then this bucket over here, the P, this is what I take home. This is what Luke takes home profit. So I budget 50% of the net proceeds that come in goes to myself and my family. So this pays my mortgage. This pays for my groceries for my families. This pays for my insurances and all these other things at my house. So 50% of this comes, so that 17.5 would go to me. So you say, oh, you got a $100,000 contract. Well, no, but I'm really only putting 17.5 in my pocket for me, and the rest is going either to someone else, to taxes, or it's going reinvested in. And then the last 10%, the S here, this is another 10%, which would be here, this, or 10%, this would be $3,500. This 10% here, I put into savings. And by savings, this is a long-term savings. This would be something like a SEP IRA. If you're self-employed, you don't have a 401k, you have IRAs. A SEP IRA is what I put my money into for long-term retirement. Some people, they have a TD Ameritrade account and they'll just put it into their stocks. And they'll put it somewhere in there for a long-term savings. Maybe they buy gold and silver, whatever it is. This is money that you set aside and you don't touch it. Until you're very old and you need it then after retirement age. A lot of times it doesn't work out that way, but it's really good to have a nest egg for a rainy day. So this is how it breaks out. This is my profit buckets. It's not rocket science by any means, but again, it's worked for me for a long time and it's very conservative and very safe. And hopefully you found it as a useful tutorial today. So keep watching for more videos. And remember, stay safe and vigilant out there.